Thanks so much for tuning into Trade Talks. I'm your host, Neeraj Shah, and our guest today is Abhay Agarwal of Piper Serica. He's been to some very interesting things beyond markets, which we'll talk to him at the end of the conversation. But Abhay, thank you for taking the time out, and hope all is well.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on the show, Neeraj. It's always a pleasure to be, online with you.
Thank you so much. The feeling is actually mutual. Abhay, I want to start off with the key talking points. No beating around the bush. To my mind, there are three talking points. The first is the risk-on appetite that seems to be back in a bunch of pockets, including the large bounce back that we've seen in the Adani Group stocks. I mean, back to some numbers, best gains, a very large 1 lakh crore bounce back in a single day. Multiple ways to describe the bounce that has happened ever since the Supreme Court appointed committee gave its verdict. What do you make of it?
Yeah, Neeraj, I will draw on my 30 years of investing experience, and a large part of that was working with international funds. And what I've seen is that there is a segment that creates Hindenburg kind of bear cartels and targets, looks for soft targets. And I think that is where, unfortunately, Adani Group became a soft target, and the damage has been caused. And I think it is for the regulators now to also introspect that what kind of speculation do they allow in some of our leading companies, which can lead to short-term wealth erosion for retail investors, mutual funds. So I think the problem, Neeraj, is that it is very easy to make allegations and make allegations, short sell stock, create a crash, make the sentiment poor, and then book your profits and run away and move on to something else. But what happens is that while doing that, you have actually impacted, companies that were focused on growing the GDP of the country. So I think what has happened is now sanity is reverting, because now a very credible committee formed by Supreme Court has come out with its findings. SEBI has come up with its findings that they have identified 6 funds that were involved in short selling the stock before the report. So I think sanity is coming back. People are saying, look, this is a value buy. The results of the group companies have been good. They are raising funding. But unfortunately, the short-term damage was done in that brief period when a lot of retail investors were forced to sell or square off their positions. So I would say that this is a lesson for us that we should not be seen as soft targets by international cartels, and we have to find a way to protect our companies.
That's an important point. There's a lot of conversation around short selling as well. But just before I get to that, Abhay, one quick question. The group, even before this verdict came out, gave its intent out to raise funds. They reinstated some of the growth plans, Ambuja being a case in point, and some others as well. What do you make of the possibilities of, or how strong, or what would be the challenges, or what would be the possibilities of the group being able to now carry out the fundraising exercise in the manner that it has always wanted to? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I don't see any problem at all, Neeraj, in the group, being able to raise the funds it's looking at. And the reason I say that, Neeraj, is because in the worst of time, the day the Hindenburg report, came out, and there was a panic in the market, and a couple of days after that, none of the bankers lost confidence in the group. They all went back to the drawing table. They all went back, did their calculations, had their meetings, met the management, and all came back saying that, look, the fundamentals are okay. We have enough asset cover. We have enough, coverage. So at the fundamental level, there is no problem. There never was. Now somebody can come and say that, look, your stock is overpriced. That is fair. You can have a buy or sell call on the stock saying that it's highly overpriced. That's fine. But making allegations about fraud and all, I think that is beyond us, behind us now. So knowing the group's ability to execute on large projects and the opportunity that India presents, I really don't think that raising the funding that the group is looking for should be a problem at all.
Okay. One question on the whole short selling piece, Abhay, because there's a lot of debate around I mean, forget the ethics part of it, but should it not be allowed? And for a lot of people, short selling is a really well established practice, which actually helps in price discovery. For a lot of people, it is a case of vultures making profits at the risk of innocent people losing out. You've had tremendous international experience. What is your thought on the same?
No, I think there are, there was a time that, what I'm saying may sound a little controversial, but there were times when short sellers were celebrated as deities. I remember a time when George Soros took on Bank of England, and Bank of England was trying to do what was good for its economy, what was good for its people, but had to devalue its currency just because of the incessant selling by hedge funds of the pound. And same thing happened in Malaysia many years later. Now, people have to understand these hedge funds, they do not have any good, they're not interested in price discovery. They are looking for soft targets. They are looking for defenseless situations where they can come and make short-term money for themselves and then move on to something else. So I think this whole argument that short selling in a coordinated manner by large global funds helps in price discovery. The market has its own way of price discovery. You buy or sell. There are so many stocks which are out of F&O, and they do price discovery on a daily basis. So what's the big deal? So I think there has to be some limit the regulator has to put on how much can be the open short position on any stock or any security of an Indian company, whether it is trading in India or outside India. I think unless that is done, we will be exposed as soft targets. Tomorrow it can be any other company, and then what happens to the long-term shareholders who panic and then sell?
Thanks for that view. Now, Abhay, two quick follow-up questions. One is on the piece around markets. So there's a lot of talk around the valuation and how we are maybe a few deviations, one standard or slightly above that, two standard deviations above long-term averages, and how if earnings growth doesn't pick up, it might be a problem. And then people cite the macro, inflation is looking good. If India has this deal with Russia on the rupee terms, and that's great for current account deficit, and the North Service exports currently are looking strong too. So that's an economy positive. How are you thinking about this?
I think the valuation of equity market cannot be looked in isolation. I think what we have to look at is, as you just mentioned, inflation and its impact on interest rates. So I think the whole movement on interest rates has been very favorable. We have 10-year G6 now, which is well below 7%, or from 7.6%, which gives headroom for RBI to not only hold rates but maybe cut rates to bring down cost of capital for the borrowers. And I think that will create this fall in interest rate. Neeraj, I think is going to create a very a virtuous credit cycle, if I can say that, both for retail borrowers and for private capex by large Indian companies. The cost of capital in India has been, pretty high for a very long period of time, and I think any fall in that automatically leads to an escalation or a higher PE multiple for the market. So, I mean, that's just pure mathematics. So I think as long as interest rates keep falling, if 10-year GSEC gets to 6.5%, you will see an increase in the Nifty valuation. And I would say that the earnings have been better than expected, slightly better than expected. So I think if the positive earnings momentum continues, which it should, I don't see any reason that that bank and financial services or IT or some of the auto companies' results don't continue to be better. Plus, if pharma and IT picks up, that will add to earnings growth. So I think I don't think the market is overvalued right now for incremental investing. And if interest rates fall, I think the market will look more and more attractive as a whole.
Got it. Abhay, if that is indeed the case, my final question on this conversation, where is it that you are finding favor? Because a bunch of high growth areas seem to be priced to perfection or slightly beyond that. Looking at at least FY24 earnings, maybe you're looking beyond, but I'm just trying to understand how you're thinking about it.
Neeraj, as we have been looking for last 1 year, our focus has been small and mid-cap stocks, especially those that are focused on domestic consumption, because and some exporters. Because what we saw was that there was absolute lack of participation in small and mid cap stocks over the last 6 months to 1 year. Because people had given up, they hadn't seen any returns. While Nifty is close to its 52-week high, you look at the small cap index, it's still 15% below its all-time high. So we are seeing opportunities there. We are seeing opportunities in small banks, NBFCs, microfinance companies, in exporters, manufactured product exporters, apparel exporters. We see value in companies that cater to domestic consumption, like MDF boards or bathroom fittings. I think these companies are very attractively priced right now. They have very good balance sheet. They have very lean cost structure now. So we are very hopeful that these companies will outperform the market over the next 12 months.
Great. Abhay, lovely talking to you as always. Thanks so much for taking the time. Actually, Abhay, just before we wrap up, just very quickly, you were up to some very interesting things. In a minute, can you just tell us what did you do?
Yeah, so there was so judo is a sport that I play. It's an international sport, both me and my kids. And there was a Judo Federation of India national camp in Pune recently, which was a 7-day camp followed by a 1-day examination. So I participated in that camp. It was very tough because you can imagine Pune was going through a heat wave and we were in a closed stadium. And I appeared for my 3rd degree black belt exam. And my daughter, and I was the oldest participant at 52 years of age, and my daughter was the youngest one at 15 years. So it was a great time that both of us backed each other and we got through the camp. So yeah, that was quite an experience.
Very, very, very stunning. Would love to talk about it in detail when we meet in person. But Abhay, thank you so much for taking the time out today.